Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of Peach Pit. My name is Kellen Hill. Wait, no, I'm not Kellen Hill. My name is Sunny Gupta. You guys might not know me. I used to mentor in the district a few years ago. I actually used to host this show a few years ago. But now I'm back, hoping to replace Kellen long term. And here we go, all right? But before we get started, we have to make the usual disclaimer. Any views or opinions shared on this show are solely that of the individual contributor and do not reflect the views of Peach Pit, any FRC team first, Georgia first, South Carolina first, or any of their affiliates and sponsors. Now, the idea behind the show is to serve as a FRC talk show that primarily focuses on the Peachtree District. We're going to be talking about a variety of topics, so don't be surprised if you see us drop some hot takes. Ultimately, we're hoping to provide some entertaining and engaging discussions. Now, as I said, my name is Sunny Gupta. I'm a retired FRC mentor from the district. David?
David Allred, mentor and drive coach for Team 4451 out of Lawrence and Fountain Inn.
Ryan?
I'm Brian Carlson with Ignite Robotics, 6829. I'm a strategy mentor.
And Thomas? Sorry, Anupam?
Hi, I'm Thomas Pirego. No, I'm actually I'm actually Anupam Goli. I used to be on the show last year, took a break for a little bit, decided to come in for this one episode. But I am an engineering teacher and the current robotics head coach at Forsyth Central High School.
Nice. Well, welcome everybody. Welcome back, Anupam. Welcome back to me as well. So let's get started. So week 4, we had 2 events happen this past weekend. Carrollton in Georgia and then Hartsville in South Carolina. So I'll do a brief Carrollton review. The winners were 2974 Walton, 6340 somebody, 1311 somebody else. 5109 were the Alliance captains for the finalists. Then you had 4189, their first pick, and 5293, their second pick. And the Impact Award winner was 7451, I believe. Yes. Anupam, do you know their Avenger?
Yeah. Avenger Robotics. Yes, so going back a little bit, 6340 was the Marist Manatees, 1311 Kel Robotics, 5109 Gladiator Robotics, 4189 is the Chargers, and 5293 they're from Duluth High School. That's about all I remember at the moment.
That's pretty good. I actually knew who 1311 was, but that's shade. So just so everybody is aware how that works. Okay. And my recap of Carrollton really is Walton. And we'll move on to Hartsville. That's my recap. All right. So for Hartsville, the winners were.
I got it.
Oh, okay. David's got it.
Yeah. Let me go.
Go for it.
All right. So Hartsville, aka Anderson 2.0. A couple of interesting strategies here. Impact Award went to 85-75, the Due Westerners, who won in Engineering Inspiration at Anderson. The Due Westerners really have a pretty strong program coming out of this town that we have high schools bigger than this town. And they have now visited Walton's facility to try to figure out how to build their own STEM facility in a town of 1,200 people. The Engineering Impact went to, drum roll please, Category 5, Team 3489 out of the Low Country area. They were Impact winners at Anderson. So our strategy in South Carolina is to bring the 2 teams and flip, and they're going for both awards. Interesting strategy. As far as the winning alliance, again, sort of a repeat of Anderson. It was 4451. My team is the number 1 alliance captain and picked 1102 Macon Magic out of Aiken, the Border Hoppers. And we picked up in the draft 4748, the Bulldog Autobots from the Charleston area. This is their first playoff ever, and they've been around since we've been around, and therefore also their first win. So congratulations to the Autobots. The number 3 alliance, captained by 343 Metal in Motion, took it to the finals with us, and they took along their partner 342 out of Burning Magnetos out of the Charleston area again, and 8137, the Biting Bulldogs from that Low Country area as well. The Biting Bulldogs were this is their second playoff appearance. Their first one was a couple weeks ago in Dalton. And so that will kind of bring us to the end of our recap for Hartsville.
Hey, David, quick question. You mentioned teams in the low country area.
Yeah.
I'm a geography nerd, but I'm not familiar with South Carolina. Can you just quickly describe, like, what is a low country area in South
The low
Carolina?
country area would be basically from basically the Charleston area, about halfway up the coast and up towards the middle of the state. Basically from the I-95 corridor towards the coast in the southeast part of the state, low country. And then I live along the I-85 corridor, which we call upstate. Then there's the Columbia area, which we call Midlands. And then the PD region is the Myrtle Beach area, that part of the coast on the northeast corner.
Gotcha.
It's a very teacher-oriented question. We should have more
It is.
teachers on here.
I consulted ChatGPT to give me the answer. How about that?
So, is there going to be a test at the end of this thing? I just want to make
Yes,
sure.
there is.
Okay.
All right.
It's called what?
Okay. What?
Midland.
All right. So moving on. We're going to keep on topic here. This is a very tight ship that I run.
Oh, yeah.
All right.
Come on, Kellen, slack up.
So David, since you're here from 4451,
Yeah.
So it's a great opportunity to just pick your thoughts around, this is the first time you guys are doing districts. This is the second district event you guys have had, right?
Yes.
So how did it feel going out for the second district event? What was your mentality going into it? Just talk about that a little bit.
Well, since a lot of the teams, were one and done in South Carolina, they would come in, play, the Palmetto Regional, and that would be it. So this is the first time I've really got to see up close everybody all at once doing improvements from one event to another, and it was quite an improvement. The average scores went up from like 59 points to 78 points in a qualification match. That's like a 30-some% increase. So that was just, a shock to see. And it looked like the people were a little bit more used to the pace of play. In fact, what the heck, we went for 13 matches instead of 12 qualification matches. I thought I thought for some reason I had some kind of surrogate match. So I went up and talked to the FDA, and he says, "No, I scheduled 13."
So we were talking hey, we should maybe slow down the matches, in our chat. And then I'm watching Hartsville, and you guys are like, "We did 13. How amazing!" Did you?
Yes, and just
was that okay with you? Did you like doing the 13th?
I was not quite ready for that. I would prefer just to have the extra time. We also had actually 2 replays in addition to the 13 because of the corners of the bridge would sometimes bend in autonomous. You know how people, when they drive up in autonomous, they're not driving just ramming the bridge. They're driving up controlled. And sometimes the corners, if they hit near the edge, the corner would bend and the bridge wouldn't tilt. So we had 2 field fault replays due to that. But in general, I wasn't ready for the 13, but we did it. And we didn't do practice matches. We did a test match. Everybody got a test match beforehand.
That's pretty good. But so as you guys were competing, right, did you, so I know the average score is higher, but as you guys were competing, did you feel competitively you were being pushed a lot more in matches, or did you guys still kind of feel it was the same as
No, it was people have now figured out the game. And so you saw a lot of different gameplay that you didn't see at the other event, because other event we played low mid because we didn't have all our automation, but a lot of people started playing low to get the link rank points, and that's why our link rank points jumped. So you would see some teams that says, hey, they didn't put up as many points. Well, they were trying to get more game pieces, not more points. And so we worked a lot better together to get those link rank points. And so you saw a lot there wasn't a lot of defense in the qualification matches. People were just focused on, hey, we got to get the game pieces back and see if we can get that rank point. So much smarter gameplay, I guess I would say,
Nice.
as well as more competitive.
Oh yeah, of course. I mean, that's going to happen. The last question, and this is something I'm sure you guys will get into next week as you prepare for district champs. You know, you've seen teams improve, and you've seen teams like, I'm sure, like dramatically improve, right? Based on the trajectory and what you saw the past two South Carolina events, what's the one South Carolina team that you're like really keeping an eye on? Like, if like these guys keep improving the way they have, they're going to be a real threat at district champs.
281 Green Villains. So they doubled their output between two events. That is hard to do. So what they said was, gee, practice and a little bit more automation really helps. But they played a very, very smooth game. I mean, they really came out of the gate. Phoenix, 45-33, they put the word charge in charge station. It's like that charge station is just not there, and they're coming over Dukes of Hazzard style. So, but in other words, they don't worry about their partners in the lanes and all. They just go and go in and score. So they improved about 50% from their last event. And of course, you had incremental improvements from 343. And they'll be bringing again more automation as they more autonomous modes as they come to district champs. So you better watch out for those three right there.
All right. Well, that's definitely good to know. I mean, I was watching Hartsville most of this past weekend, and so I definitely picked up on quite a few of those teams you mentioned. 45-33 especially has like a pretty slick arm. So
yeah.
I was just impressed that they got it working. You know, just doing that is pretty impressive. And then they were moving really quickly. So
they were moving quickly, and the charge station, whatever. Bam. You know, so yeah. At 1102, their improvement might not have been as much as I was expecting, but they were trying some things. Right? They were trying out different strategies. Don't fall asleep on those guys.
For sure. So moving on, you know, I think one thing that I'd like to discuss is just sort of like the continued domination by top teams, right? So Walton and 6340 won Dalton a couple weeks ago, then they won Carrollton this past weekend, right? And 4451 and 1102, you know, you guys won Anderson a couple weeks ago, and then now you won Hartsville this past weekend, right?
Right.
So, you know, what do you guys think about that, right? Like, is this gonna continue in DCMP? Like, are people going to be able to catch up? Like, what are y'all's thoughts there?
So, I think teams are starting to catch up. Certainly, you can see it at Carrollton that, yes, Walton was stellar there. They were stellar at Dalton, but the gap had shrunk. And again, it comes back to teams doing smarter gameplay, having more practice and more automation. But the gap between the top team and the next few best teams had shrunk. And at Carrollton, there were a couple of teams that were within swinging distance.
So could you tell us a couple of those team numbers?
Yeah. So honestly, I'm going to go with the finalists, 5109, 4189. If you look at their cycle times, they were 5109 especially was very quick in the playoffs. So their cycle times were approaching that of Walton. And 4189, I think, was on par, maybe even better than 6340 just from their ability to pick up from the floor. And so that gap is definitely shrinking. And again, it's the smarter gameplay, going for links down low, and not just trying to score game pieces high and mid for points.
So can 4189 pick up cones like falling over on the ground, or are they just picking like a straight up cones off the ground?
So they have this bumper cutout in their robot, and what they do is they drive into the cone so that the cone comes into their cutout, and it's actually cut out in the frame. So they just orient their robot so that the cone comes into their cutout, and then they clamp onto it, drive back, and then do a little behind the back score on that. Yeah. And really, it's just a matter of driver practice for them, but it does significantly decrease cycle times for them.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. The one thing that I've noticed, Walton was going six game pieces in a balance, or if the balance was covered at their first event in Dalton, they could do 7. Now they're hitting 8. And I think, as David pointed out, it's easier for a team to go from 4 to 6 than for a team to go from 7 to 8 or 8 to 9. Those times there's less space to find time to save to get the extra cycle. And so those teams are using automation to sort of catch up a little bit to the top teams.
Yeah. I will say about Walton, like somehow they managed to get like the least competitive district schedule, like I think anybody has. Like I don't know how they managed to have no other like significant, I'd say like top teams play against them, right? Like yeah,
and I think that was impacted by Gwinnett, right? A lot of teams really went there for the drive, and so and that made it really hard going to Dalton or Carrollton doing back to back, because a few teams did that, but if you're trying to make improvements, you don't want to do that.
Yeah, but it just seems to work out for them. So I guess I am excited to see them at DCMP to see like whether all that will still stack up when it's a full field of robots, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but that like I don't want to lead the discussion, but that like kind of gets me hyped up for like what's going to happen at Macon and then at district championships. You have teams that are not our traditional like top teams, but they're improving very quickly, right? And they're going to hit it, and they're going to hit a ceiling, but you're going to find that like just because you have 4451 on an alliance or you have Walton on an alliance, I don't think that guarantees you a win, especially when it comes to district champs, right?
No.
Yeah, I think one of the
go ahead.
Yeah, so one of the big things that is a good indicator of your performance at district championship will be your ability to navigate around defense and deal with hardships. So I think on one hand, Walton has gone luckily to some of the less competitive events, but that might bite them when it comes to district championships because they haven't had to play against a higher level of defense, or they haven't had to play at the intensity required to win a match when you're only up by like 1 point or when you're down by a couple. Because it's a little bit of a mental game to be able to make those quick decisions, go after certain pieces.
Yeah. If you look at like Dalton last year, 1771, cakewalked through quals, right? And then when Otto and Ignite teamed up, we give them a good run, puts them under pressure, and having to make those decisions and deal with that kind of stuff is different than Walton's gone through, right? Now, that being said, there's a reason why there's a lot of banners up at Walton's facility, and they seem to just, for whatever reason, just win the state, right, or the district. So them having the practice field, I think they'll get the driver experience they need, but it will be different for them. And I also think that if you look at the caliber of teams at most qualifying events, you usually have a small top tier, you have a little bigger second tier, and then it usually falls off pretty heavily after that. You're not going to see that at states. You're not going to have matches off where you're like, oh, we can go in this one and we know we can try something new because we know we're going to win, right?
Yes, I think it's not going to be like somebody's just going to walk in, rank 1, and be done. It's going to take the right schedule. It's going to take the right partners to get those extra rank points. Those link rank points are going to be critical at district championships. And so what you're going to have is you've got this isolation pod of South Carolina teams and this isolation pod of Georgia teams. There's been a little bit of intermixing, but almost none. And so now we're going to walk in and say in a qualification match, plan a match to get a link rank point when we've never played together before. So I think the scheduling gods are going to make that top 8 kind of odd, or potentially kind of odd. I don't see one team just walking in and saying, hey, I got it, unless he just happened to have a good schedule.
Yeah.
Well, I think with the depth at district championships, like we saw and this is kind of going to our next point. We saw at the Hartsville and Carrollton event that 4 ranking points is getting more common, and I think at district championships, it's going to get to the point where if you're not getting the link RP or the charge station RP in a match, even if you lose, that might be enough. Missing that in one match might be enough to get you out of the top 8.
Yeah, you're not in top 8 unless you're walking away with 1 extra rank point every match.
Honestly, I think like teams are, even through this past weekend, I think teams are much closer to the 4 RPs than it seems like. It just seems to me like teams aren't, especially in qualification, teams are kind of doing their own thing. So they're coming in hot with game pieces, they're like dropping them low, and then they're flying back out, right? There's like very little thought, it seems like to me at least, right? Very little thought about, okay, I'm coming in hot with a game piece. There's 2 down low here. Let me put it next to the 2 that are down low and get that link, right? So, I really do think that teams need to get more strategic about game piece placement, and maybe we'll see that at district champs, right? Because right now people are just focusing on like, how do I get better? How do I get faster? And maybe that next leg up is, okay, I need to think about where I'm putting pieces, right?
Well, yeah. So, like I said, this whole season, this qualification coaching is more like elimination coaching if you do it right. So I was in 3 of those link rank point matches, and our alliances were extremely coordinated about, here was the game plan, here's what you're doing, you're working this way from outside in, I'm working from inside out, and we're going to go here, here, and here, and then low, and then we'd call out the missing game pieces. And that's how, I mean, it's not just like 3 people randomly saying, hey, we're gonna score a ball in a goal. No, this is way more coordinated. It's like an elimination match. It's fun. Yeah. It's a lot of fun to coach.
And I think it gets even messier when you're trying to coordinate like traffic, right? Because you want to, at Macon for sure, like there's going to be 2 scorers on your alliance. So how do you keep everybody out of your way, but then also, make sure that you're putting things down where they're supposed to be, right?
Right.
So yes. So like my tip that I came up from not coaching or going to any events this season is that I think in the match, coaches need to have like a mental point where they stop doing their own thing and they start looking at what is scored, right? So like I would say that at like the 60-second mark, you need to stop like just hustling back and forth, but like look at what is down in front of you and say, okay, there's a piece missing over there, there's a piece missing over there. In these 2-3 runs, we're going to pick up these like 10 points quickly, right? So like that's my tip. Do you guys have anything that you would recommend for teams that would like maybe help them be more strategic in placement or driving or anything like that?
I mean, I think the biggest thing is obviously to coordinate with your alliance partners before a match. Our drive team and coach does that before, but it was like David saying, like, you have to have a plan going into the match. So get a whiteboard, circle what links you're going to do, circle what areas your partner is going to do. And if maybe your partner only does cubes, then make sure that they can complement what you or your other alliance partner can do to get those links.
Yeah, and I'd go along with that. It's all about coordination, right? And so the coaches need to be talking and knowing what they have in front of them. Where if somebody says, does anybody need one piece? They can answer yes. And then also know how to explain where that piece needs to go to other teams. Don't say, yeah, I need one, and have them try to figure it out. Tell them, like, I need it on my left side low or left side high. So that way the driver, when they're coming back across, knows where it's at. Because communication is how you find these pieces, and you have to have that plan before you go in.
Yeah, and I think one thing that people aren't thinking, that I think most people aren't thinking about right now, but might be kind of a problem at Macon, but I think it's going to be a huge problem at district champs, is how do you handle 3 scorers, right? Because if you have like 44-51, 68-29, 17-71 on an alliance playing in qualifications, I don't think anybody is going to go play defense. I don't think it's going to be like, all right, like, 44-51, you guys go play defense, let us do the scoring, right?
Sure,
So, yeah. Which, I mean, you guys are an amazing, like, gracious team. You might go do that, right?
Yeah,
But
if
you
they
know,
want to.
how do you try and handle 3 scorers coming into the zone, coordinating, all that stuff, right?
All right.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, go for it.
So first part is where you getting the game pieces from. And so that's the most difficult part. So we are the vacuum cleaner. We pick up floor pieces. And so if you have the single station loaders, some people load from the top, right? They drive up and they might wait and park and blah blah blah. And I need that single station just to throw something on the ground. So you gotta have a really well coordinated plan about not having 3 people in that pickup area at the same time. The next thing is you got to have a traffic pattern in and out. And so usually the easiest way is just to say, I'm starting from the right side working left, and you're starting from the left side working right. And then you kind of fill in when we're not in there, fill in what we missed.
Or
so it was easier for us to work outside in, and then the low nodes on the outside edges. That was the easiest traffic pattern we ever came up with.
and then that third team, you just have them take the bridge every time. But like
Yes,
whoever,
if somebody can take the bridge and they got the middle.
yeah,
Yep.
whoever gets the short straw, you just take the bridge every time.
Well,
Yeah.
Phoenix will charge right over that sucker for you.
Yeah, our driver this past weekend was practicing in the bridge because I got too nervous of him getting air coming off that thing and our swerve modules blowing up eventually. It definitely takes some practice to get used to that. Usually a few times over it back and forth, you get the feel for when it starts tipping, and you do the stutter as you go over the top.
Yeah. Who was the team? So I think Anupam, I think I saw a video of you guys driving like recently that like you guys were getting air over the wire bump that's on the far side of the bridge. Is that right? Or am I like
that would probably make sense?
probably makes sense. Yeah, okay. But yeah. So you were saying something? Go ahead. Anupam.
So my thought was at district championships, it could also depend on who you're playing with, or who you're playing against. So if you have 3 scorers, right, and with how the pace of the game has been going, I could see or envision a strat play where you're all busting your butts for getting the 4th link, or honestly, it might even be strategic to deny that cooperation so that you had to make your opponent do 5. And if you know that you can do 5 yourself, but that's a different conversation. But you bust your whole alliance's butt to get 4 RP or 4 links to get that ranking point, and then you send a defender over. I could see that being a viable strategy in that case. That way, your top 2 opponent offensive robots stay playing offense, and then you try to slow the other alliance down to prevent them from getting that link or getting points in general.
Mm-hmm.
So I think there's going to be a little bit of playing it by the ear, playing it by the score type of situation in the match.
Interesting.
Yeah, and that's one of the things that I've seen too. It's being aware of the score, and if you have the victory, right, be aware that you don't risk that. I've seen some times where people break late trying to get up there, and they may not get up, and they touch, and they, you had enough points for the victory, and now you've canceled those because of that. So time awareness of where you're at in the match, so that way you do that. And when you get to playoffs, if you can, get in the practice field and try doing 2 and 3 bot coordinated balances at the end game. You definitely don't want to be trying those out during the middle of a match.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that because I'm not sure how much in the Georgia events triple balance came in the eliminations when the game's on the line. We did a lot of triple balancing on our lines, just to practice that and get used to it and not getting nervous about it and whatnot. So if you haven't played that game, and you're going to need it in district champs. So people are making better practice at triple balance now.
Honestly, not even district champs. Like
best.
Like I was watching Hartsville, and the finals were the first seed, you guys, David, versus the third seed, and the third seed honestly looked really sharp.
Oh yeah.
But I think they missed both of their balances in playoffs because they weren't practiced with the 3, or they were trying to push too much time, right? And it doesn't matter how good you are, you can't miss the triple balance in playoffs,
Nope.
like even at a qualifier.
No.
So, forget district champs, you teams going to Macon, like you better be able to do that triple balance, I would say, in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I took some stupid risk in qualification matches, and we tried to do some triples that we went from triple to nothing. So I lost 2 rank points that way, which was kind of dumb on my part. But we were also practicing hero balancing a little, not just to be a hero about it, but if you can't perform that under pressure and calmly, then it's going to be difficult to pull that off in finals 1.
Yeah, for sure. So our next little mini segment is going to be, we're going to take a look at a finals match 2 at Carrollton. And Anupam saw some interesting things, like tips that he felt like I believe it was the 4th seed, that the 4th seed could have used to maybe even overcome the 1st seed here. So Ian's already pulled up the match. Ian, let's hit play, and Anupam, you can talk us through what's going on here.
Before you hit play, real quick, just a little background. We've all seen Carrollton. Just a little bit of background. So this 4th seed was one of the most well put together alliances, and a lot of teams assumed, or a lot of people assumed, that Walton, would run over this event. But I think the 4th seed not only showed immense potential, but put up a fight, and they could have pulled off an upset. I think they had a strong alliance. So we'll play this match, and we'll see some mistakes that they make that they could have improved. And I think that's going to be the name of the game going forward, especially at district championships, is you essentially have to play a perfect game if you want to be able to pull off an upset at that level.
All right, so let's hit play, and let's hear your commentary on it. Let's do it.
Okay. So autonomous, everything's fine. Blue Alliance, Alliance 4 pulled off their auton routines perfectly. You'll notice that Red didn't get a community, but Walton offset it with theirs. So mistake number 1 happens shortly over here. So 4189, they're trying to extend, and they're trying to score, and they're bobbling around the cone a little bit, right? So it takes them a full 11 seconds to score that cone, and eventually ends up in the hybrid node. That is 11 seconds that you could have spent had you realized that your cone wasn't tipped properly. You could have got another game piece over there. So, again, it's just kind of a time costing mistake. There was another point at which 5109 drops a game piece. That's kind of a minor thing, though. Drops happen. But we'll continue watching. It's pretty neck and neck here. You can see that 5109 and 4189 both have solid. Here's another mistake. 5109 is kind of quick and tries to place a game piece on the top row, and they miss. I think taking another second to line that up properly would have been better. Here they line up properly but miss again. And then here's another costly mistake is, they've got 20 seconds left on the match, and they're balancing, but you've got 20 seconds. You can take your time to pull the triple off because you need the triple to overcome the point deficit at this point.
That looked so weird to me. It looked like one of the blue teams pushed their alliance partners off the bridge.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. Like maybe they thought they couldn't triple, so they're like, "All right, let's get out of here." All right, thanks for that video, Ian. We appreciate it. But so sorry.
I guess kind of tallying up what that could have potentially been. So 5109 dropped 2 cones. If they had scored those, that would have been 10 points. That would have been an extra 5 for completing a link, 15 points. And then had they taken the time to pull off the triple or coordinate a little bit better, that's another 10 points. And that would have swung the match in their favor. So I guess the main thing, kind of a couple takeaways there is you have to you have to maximize your time. So you don't want to leave like 15 seconds on the clock. You want to make sure you're fast enough where you're not spending 11 seconds putting a game piece down only for it to score at the low. But at the same time, you don't want to just be too quick about trying to place a high game piece and it just end up falling down into the hybrid node. So, and that kind of comes with practice.
Yeah, I actually saw that quite a bit at Hartsville this past weekend. I think as teams are getting more comfortable going to the high nodes, that like they're just barely not able to reach with the cone, or like they're like a little bit too like not careful with the cube, and then it falls and it ends up who knows where, right? So like teams definitely have to be careful, and I definitely resonate with your point about like if something's not working, like give it a shot, but like if it's not working, like move on, right? Like drop the piece, do what you need to do, but go on and get to your next cycle. So definitely agree with that.
Especially in this game, like if you miss, it's going to fall into the hybrid node, and it still scores points. So you might as well just drop it and go and get another one.
So not always though, right? Because it could fall and then get caught on like a lower peg. So in that instance, is it scored at all? Right? It's like completely not scored.
I think it needs to touch the carpet.
Yeah. So.
Yeah, I think it's pretty rare that it gets caught on the peg. They typically slide down all the way. But
all right. Well, we appreciate that look, Anupam, and so I think it's going to be important as teams like get into the match strategy. I will say, really quickly as we wrap up, the review over this past weekend, scouting is always important. You talked about, Anupam, how the 4th seed at Carrollton was just very well-rounded, very well picked, right? And unfortunately, I think Carrollton was another event where scouting, like the alliance selections, took forever, right? So, I really think that, what can some teams do to improve their picks? What are some things that teams need to look out for when they're creating a well-rounded alliance, especially in like Macon and district champs to a degree? Thoughts?
So the first.
Oh, go for it, Brian.
The first thing is on the how long it takes, right? If you don't have enough students or parents or mentors to scout, team up with other teams, right? And put together a scouting alliance, because right now with the alliances being, or the competitions being smaller in the 20 range, mid 20 range, I think there are several people who have been in a picking position that haven't been doing that before, and they're not as experienced with that and aren't prepared. So do a lot of that stuff first. I generally say your first pick is usually a little bit easier than the second pick, because you're usually picking off a lot of stats. But your second pick, your 3-bot, try finding the stuff that's not in the paper. Like when we were at Gwinnett, one of the things that we saw in our 3-bot was they would try to climb, and at 5 seconds left, they would back away because they weren't going to make it, right? It's those kind of things that you want to try seeing, because you can get the numbers a lot of places, but there's those kind of things that will help you maximize that value.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, the numbers don't tell the story that you need to put an alliance together at all. I mean, it does, right? Okay, they scored 4 cones, ooh, whatever. Where did they get them? Where do they drive? Can they get over the charge station? What autonomous mode? How wonky are they on the bridge? Are they top heavy? Do they feel comfortable? Do they get up there? Do they wiggle? So it's all super scouting to put a good alliance together. I mean, the numbers are easy. A good alliance will have a well-balanced team that doesn't have the same strength. You got to have diversity of strength and diversity of game piece location.
Yeah.
And
diversity.
On like a macro level, one of the things that your team as a whole, or a team as a whole, can do is create a culture around scouting. So that's one thing that we pride on we take pride in on Team Auto is our scouting system and our culture around scouting. So we have a team of students who are dedicated to watching match videos and pre-scouting, and we have a whole data system and an input team, and we take turns. We have assigned rotations for students to scout, and that may not sound like fun, but what happens is people buy into the process. They understand that this is an integral part to doing well in a competition. Is you have to, if you want to be in a picking position, well, if you want to win the tournament, you have to be in a picking position. If you want to have a good alliance, you need to have the data and the knowledge to make a good alliance. And so, kind of that realization as a whole leads to our team putting an effort into our scouting program. As far as like the actual scouting itself, I mean, it's like you guys say, where do they get the pieces from? How do they complement us? What type of alliance? And this is one of the big questions that we try to answer is what type of alliance can we make with who we have, and will that take us far enough? And so we try to look for teams that, so for example, at Gwinnett, we knew we were a cube pet specialist. So we primarily looked at bots that manipulated cones and scored them high and mid. And we found the 2 robots that could score cones, and we went with those 2 robots. It didn't matter about anything else. We just needed to know that they could complement us and we could get links.
Right. The other thing when scouting, it's you sort of heard that in a lot of different of these, what Anupam and David mentioned, which is, what are you looking for? It's easy to say, I want to scout everything, right? And you lose the needle in the haystack. You need to figure out what it is you're looking for if you were putting together an alliance, or how you would fit into alliance. So you gather the information that gives you the insight to make those decisions. And so initially, when we were doing a bunch of, figuring out how we're going to scout, I want to know which node they're placing it on. Are they going middle, right, or left? I want to know game, cubes and all this other stuff. And it's just like, I started dialing that back because it makes it harder for the scouts to scout. You're going to miss more stuff. It takes it longer, and I'm not getting the important stuff. So try to really have a purpose for what you're trying to get, so you can make decisions.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask this, because like Brian, I think you hit on a good point that like the scouting textbook is all about like, gather your data, build alliance that's like the best fit, right? That's like stuff I think we've like frankly heard like repeated over and over again.
Yeah.
But if you're a team that really doesn't have a program, that might have been like surprised by becoming an alliance captain, what are some things that you would recommend that like, hey, do these 1, 2, or 3 things? Like for me, I've seen this like Statbotics website that like they've created that has like pretty good numbers. So like I would probably be like, hey, if you don't have any numbers, this may be a good place to start.
Yeah.
Right. But what can you do that isn't the whole like program building, all that? If you have like 2 or 3 people that don't really know what they're doing, what can they do to like get you rolling in the right direction?
So last year we relied a lot on like Caleb on Chief Delphi had basically a spreadsheet. Caleb or somebody else had a spreadsheet that was pulling data from the Blue Alliance and generated OPR, so you can sort of see stuff and sort of do that kind of analysis. That kind of stuff is free. Sort of like the site that you mentioned. If you don't have the full alliance and you're at the end of day 1, you're in the top 15. Start finding those kind of cheap resources you can use. The other thing is, there's a lot of things you can do that will give you a lot of functionality, but doesn't sound sexy. We use pencil and paper to scout. We just have a grid and we just tick mark how many they score, high, middle, low, right? And we have somebody else entering it into a Google form, right? And another easy way to do a simple scouting is in your KOP, there's a Tableau license key for a desktop. And if you go to tableau.com/first-robotics, they have like 5 videos that says, here's how you use Tableau. And you can visualize your data and you can hook up your Tableau to your Google Sheet. And they will walk you through, here's how you could look for this during alliance selection and stuff like that. And so it is fairly easy nowadays to find tools and put them together.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I have like personally, I've been under the opinion that like, you don't need the whole mountain of data to like be decent at alliance selections.
Mhm.
Like, and especially with the tools that exist now, right? Like, I would personally do like StatBotics is like one, right? Just to be able to rank teams, but then identify like what teams can actually do and like where there's specialties, right?
Mhm.
So that if you are a generalist, you probably want to sync up with the best generalist, right? That's like a very easy filter that you can apply in your mind to be like, okay, this team is for top available on StatBotics and they're a generalist, we're going to go up with them, right?
Yeah.
But if you're a cube bot, you probably want to sync up with not another cube bot, right? So if it's
Yeah.
like, hey, Otto's next available on StatBotics, but they're heavy on cubes, we're not going to go with them. We're going to go with like the next available team, right?
Mhm.
So I think there are teams. I think the things that a lot of teams can do to really simplify, and like that's what I would recommend personally.
Yeah.
Because
Well, the other thing is the stuff that you need to know isn't in those stats, right? So if you're into day one and you're top 15 and it's a new experience for you, go with the simple spreadsheets or the website, right? And on day 2, do nothing but have 2 or 3 people just watch matches to see something that catches their eye, right? It's that kind of stuff that's going to make the right pick for you, not just the number pick for you.
yeah, I agree. All right, cool. So that is that. And that's like the past. Let's like focus our attention to Macon. All right. So Macon, which I'm calling like Gwinnett V2, right? We have a few changes here and there, but Macon is going to be a pretty strong repeat of Gwinnett. Though the one big change that I'll really call out is there's a team that we haven't seen since week 1 that is now back in play, and that's Team 6919, right?
Yeah.
They are top tier by almost every metric you can put together, but now they're back, and I'm hearing that they're back with some improvements and changes, which is a little scary because they were pretty good in week 1. But we'll talk about that in a minute. This event is also second plays for some notable teams like 1771, 6829, 8736, 1746, 1414, and that list goes on and on. So I am personally excited for the depth, right? And I'm also excited for the development and like what these teams are like bringing to the table that's new, right? So we're going to start with actually Anupam, your team, 1746. Talk briefly about your experience at your first event and like what were you guys thinking coming out of it?
Mm-hmm. So it kind of starts back to kickoff. During our simulation, we determined that we needed to kind of do everything, and we wanted to be able to pick up cones and cubes any way possible from the floor and from the human player substation, the single substation, to maximize or minimize cycle times. So the robot we designed and built for Gwinnett, it all worked separately, but we never really integrated it together until it got together. So separately, the indexer and the intake and the placer mechanism.
So it all works like on paper, in theory. You never.
It compiled.
Well, they worked separately. Yeah, they compiled and they worked separately with dummy data. But when you put them all together, it was a hot mess. It was a very clean looking hot mess, but we didn't end up being able to pick up cones with that. or cubes. We actually popped a few cubes, so he's resorted to just getting cubes from the human player substation into our little arm. Our indexer, we were able to index a cone, and our clamper didn't clamp on the cones properly, so we were a cube only robot. It was very frustrating, and the biggest thing was all these elements. We had a tiny 25 by 25 chassis, so all these elements were compacted in there with a small wheelbase and built upwards. So this whole thing was terribly high CG, near impossible to smoothly control. So like we actually cut our speed down almost half, because otherwise any change in the direction of the robot, the momentum's going one way, and there's something you want to go this way, and that would cause
And
the
the
robot
top
to tip.
half of your robot's going the other way. Is that
Yeah.
the elevator you guys put on the top floor isn't going the right way? No, okay.
No.
So let's take a look at what you guys have coming up. So Ian, can we pull up the image? And
Yeah.
so talk us through what kind of changes did you guys make? I see the elevator, which was on your previous machine. I noticed change in configuration. So walk us through the changes.
Yeah. So it kind of starts with Gwinnett again. It was a CG. The CG was our number one priority to address, because you can have all the mechanisms in the world, but if you're driving at half speed, you're limiting your cycles to half of what you can do at most. So we knew that we wanted to redesign this, but we only had a week and a half realistically. So the key was simplicity. So because the key was simplicity, we kind of looked at some of the other solutions that were effective that were out there. The big idea was, keep the current elevator, maybe change the angle, and that's what you see here. We have the same exact elevator as before. Change the angle, and then combine the intake and indexing and placing into one mechanism. And so this claw here is actually one that 111 Wildstang designed, and they actually have resources posted in their build blog, so it's publicly available. You can see their design process with that. So we kind of ran with that idea, and then we got some inspiration from another team, 1339, Angel Botics, and for the wrist actuation. So what we're seeing here is the roller claw that can pick up cones and cubes from the human player substation and the ground on a little actuating wrist, and then the same elevator as before. And to pull this off, we broke up the work into 4 or 5 different pieces. So that way we can get a lot of student involvement in that. That was one of the things that we wanted to do going into this rebuild, was we wanted to make sure that we had built a lot of depth over the season and design skills, and we wanted to utilize that instead of turning this into a project that only 1 or 2 students were involved in. So we brought a lot of that, divided up the work, integrated it, manufactured it, and pulled all hands on deck for manufacturing it, including some steel plates that you don't see in here, down low for ballast. Assembled it. It was all assembled and wired up by Saturday, so in the span of less than a week.
That's pretty good. So Saturday was 4 days ago. Where do you guys stand now? Is it driving? Is it hustling?
Yeah. So it's driving. The elevator moves. The claw can intake from the human player station and spit out. We are still ironing the kinks out on the wrist actuation. So we're hoping to have some of that there. But our driver's been taking some time to practice pathing cycles and just getting game pieces from the human player substation and spitting them back out. So we're not waiting for everything to be done to get our driver used to this new robot.
Yeah. All right. Here is a little bit of a spicy question. Throwing some drama before the weekend. Are you guys better than 6829?
As of now, no. As of now, we can only score high cubes and potentially cones, but low cones. But we'll see.
We'll see.
I like how speedy this robot is now.
I would like to point out to anybody that's paying attention that was not a no. That was we'll see. So
I'm about to say, the question is going to be, how close are you to 69-19, really? Because if you look at Gwinnett, they're the only one that's proven, right? 1771, in their, they struggled at Gwinnett at times, right? They came together. And this competition is going to be about all the people that were consistent week 1 and 3 are gone, and who's going to be able to step up and be consistent this time.
Yeah. And speaking of 69-19, while we're kind of looking at this robot, their robot doesn't look too much like this, but I hear that they have also adopted this intake, right? Which I didn't feel like 69-19's intake was like necessarily the slowest part of the game. I felt like their arm elevator maneuvering was like a bit slower. But maybe like, I don't know what other changes they made. Like maybe the new intake allowed them to be a little bit quicker with their arm elevator system, right? So, but I mean, they've had like the whole competitive season to implement it, get it ironed out. I'm sure they got it implemented a couple weeks ago, whereas you guys got it implemented a couple days ago, right? So
A couple hours ago.
yeah.
Yeah.
So like there's like a little bit of a difference there, right?
So now, by the way, I think officially, right, Anupam, that if you face us in elims, you're not going to use the balance, an all-time balance, right?
What? I don't.
So
I never made that agreement.
What are these backroom deals?
Yeah. Well, so they were working on their all-time balance, and I'm like, hey, try this, right? And then they started nailing their all-time balance, and so they have that going really well. And I got some questions about this. Can you go through the week and sort of like, when did you start? How did you get agreement to basically, like I say, it's a 90% rebuild, but it's really 90% about getting rid of stuff, right? You kept the drivetrain, you kept the elevator, and you cut different, supports, and you just built the intake, right? So it was a major change, but you reused a lot. How did that progress through the week? And were you going from like 3 in the afternoon to 11 o'clock at night, or were you just doing like 3 or 4 hours a day?
Well, so our typical meeting schedule is Monday and Wednesday 4 to 8, Friday 4 to 7, and Saturdays 9 to 3, 4, 5, whenever I get tired. But kind of walking back at Gwinnett, day one we're struggling, and we kind of see the ceiling of this robot at Gwinnett, and the gears are starting to turn in a lot of our minds of, hey, that robot was at weight already. We're having these huge CG issues. We're having trouble picking up cones and cubes. We're having a lot of trouble doing the handoff and everything. And so we all, at the end of the day, our goal is to make Worlds this year. So to make Worlds, you either have to win one of those Culture Chains awards, or you have to essentially make it to finals at District Champs. So we have to put our in effort towards making that. And so we all kind of had a discussion Sunday after Gwinnett. Our lead mechanical student was actually pulled aside a little bit to start kind of thinking of ideas of, where do we go with this robot, or how do we make it to Worlds? So Sunday, we get back from Gwinnett and we have a serious discussion. All right, what are our goals? How do we get there? What are our paths forward? We can either improve this current robot, or we can look at redoing part of it, and simplifying things was the key word. And so that's when we brought up the idea of this 111 style intake. Our lead mechanical student had some like head CAD and diagrams going, how this intake would essentially do what we wanted to do at the beginning of the year, and it would simplify everything. And again, the number one thing was lowering the CG to make it so that we can actually drive around at full speed without the risk of tipping over. So that was Sunday. By Monday evening, we had most of the design down other than the fine details by late Tuesday. So we met Monday during the day, worked on CAD. I sent pictures in the mentor chat, but the students started disassembling the robot Monday morning in my class. I gave them some permission to do that. And by midday Monday in the school day, they had disassembled it down to the chassis. And programming students started to work on like autonomous stuff while it was just a chassis. By Wednesday, the design was completely done. That included staying up until 1:30 or 2 o'clock on the students' parts for a few nights doing CAD calls and such like that. But by Wednesday, we were in a point where we were ready to manufacture everything. And so our manufacturing students went into overdrive, cutting down our elevator rails, CNCing the polycarb parts, 3D printing. And we've got like 6 or 7 3D printers, and a couple of students have 3D printers. So just running all the 3D printers at once to get these parts going so that Friday they could start mechanically assembling it, and Saturday they finished fully mechanically assembling everything and leaving it in electrical's ballpark to do all the wiring.
So you added steel plates in the bottom. Did you take all your control system out, or did you leave that in there?
We took all of it out. We redid our belly pan. It was polycarb before. We redid parts of those out of steel. So, yeah, we essentially rewired all of the robot in the process, other than the swerve modules.
Okay, so I am sure there's going to be much more to say on this, and hopefully you guys partner up with another great team that may or may not be on this call, and you guys are very successful this upcoming weekend.
So I want to point one thing out.
Okay,
Last year, Ignite copied Otto's High Climb, and this year Otto copied a bunch of other stuff. In season, you don't have time to design; you have time to copy.
Time to iterate. That's
iterate. Steal from the best, invent the rest.
Exactly.
Inspired, as we said.
Inspired. There you go. Iterate, inspiration. It's all the same. All right. So in some of the final minutes of the show, we want to take a chance to highlight specific teams at Macon. So the idea here is just go around the table, go around the Zoom room or whatever, and everybody just pick out one team that they want, that they're watching out for a Macon, right? And give a quick justification. We'll have a little bit of a chat back and forth, and then we'll hopefully take it to the end.
Can we lay out one ground rule?
Okay.
You can't mention 69-19. That's the obvious one.
Okay. I think, yeah. Okay, so they've been mentioned. So no 69-19. We already know they're going to be good.
1771.
Are you mentioning them, or are you?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are you curious about them?
Okay.
I'm very curious about what they're going to bring.
Right.
Okay. Sorry. So, David, you can go first.
Yeah, sorry. I just had to jump in there because I don't know all the Georgia
problem.
teams down there, but I know that as I jumped on that one.
Yeah, 1771. I will say, and David, I'll let you say your piece after that, is, I think 1771 has like a very well-designed arm and everything. I don't know if their intake was really at it at the last event. So what are you hoping to see from them, David?
Right. So the cone handoff, right? So they're doing the handoff with the lightweight arm. At least that's when they talked about it at the last meeting. That's what they were going for. And so if they've got that cone handoff figured out, they were pretty good with cubes. And if they got the cone going, they're going to be dangerous.
Yeah, and I think they won their last event, I will say, by the skin of their teeth, because that first seed was really moving along, and ran into some bumps. I think they're at the end. So, yeah, 1771 for sure. Anupam?
I'm gonna go with 9260, built for Bib, the rookie team. So they had a really strong every bot. They were the highest rookie seed and the rookie all-star at the Albany event. And I just liked the way they played at that event. I liked the fact that they were strong in week one, and it seems like they know what they're doing, and I feel like they will have either gotten a lot of practice or made some changes for Macon. So, and this is their home event too, so excited to see what they bring.
Yeah, I will say those like folks down in Bibb County are, at least to me, they're like known for their simple yet very good robots. So it does not surprise me that they have something like that going on. All right, Brian.
So I was looking at 1414 IHOT and 1746 Auto. I think they both have a lot of improvement to go. But the one I'm going to go with is 1746 Auto. The speed that they have and their history of doing mid-season changes in design and being able to pull them off. I think the only time you maybe struggled was in 2018. It was, but so I expect them to struggle the first few matches, and then anybody going to Macon, ignore the first 9 matches from Otto and watch the last 3 because they will pull that off. I expect. And I'm curious to see where that lands.
Yeah, that's a pretty good rule. But I will caution 1746, and obviously Anupam, you're here on the call. Like, all the points matter, especially if you're trying to get to Worlds, right? So you have to make that deep drive into eliminations and like grab all those points. So I don't know if you can wait for the first 9 matches to really get going. I think you got to do it a little quicker.
We've prioritized what we need to start the event running, and hopefully tomorrow's practice we'll get everything together for that.
Yeah. All right. I think I get the last pick, and I'm going to go with 6829 Ignite. I think you guys, Brian, I think they were like really solid at Gwinnett. They like probably didn't have all of the things ironed out, but from what I've seen over the past few days, I think they're like in that top tier level. So like at the level of 1771, 6919. And Brian, I'll let you humble your team and figure all that stuff out, right? But I'm gonna say my piece. So I think that they're vying at that level. So I think the trick or like the key will be, executing at that level and making sure you guys don't get left out in the cold. Because if there's only like 3 or 4 top teams, it can be a bit of a jostle to see, okay, who's going to be able to get together. So hopefully you guys get there. Hopefully it works out for you guys. But I'm looking out for Ignite Robotics. All right. Yeah. Now, before we close the show, any closing thoughts? Anything to say here? Going once.
Yeah, I Macon and then turning around district champs. It's gonna be a fun 2 weeks, and with the new additions of what I saw from Hartsville, it's gonna be interesting to play some teams. Right now you talk about who you're gonna see at the matches, and we know sort of the personality of all those teams. You can sort of predict what they might do. There's gonna be a lot of X factors where you really don't know the teams, and they're going to be doing stuff that you don't expect. And so I think it's going to be a very fun close to the season.
Yeah, I absolutely agree.
I'm excited to play with South Carolina teams at district championships. And the district system is supposed to encourage, or adding South Carolina was supposed to also encourage kind of some mingling again with teams. I feel like we didn't see that with the district event placement this year. Maybe in the future, next year, whatever team I'm with will go to South Carolina events. But I'm definitely excited to see how that changes district champs.
No. Next season, here's what needs to happen. Anybody in the district that's ranked like 15 or above, everybody goes to Dalton, right? Like that's how it has to go, okay? Walton doesn't win another Dalton banner. Everybody just go to Dalton, and then you guys figure it out from there,
Yeah.
right?
Well, the thing is, if Gwinnett wasn't week 3, Anderson would have been on our list, right? Gwinnett week 3 really messed up a lot of the Atlanta teams, which might have short drives, other things.
Mm-hmm. David, I think you're on mute, but you want to say something here?
Yeah. I think that Gwinnett placement did mess up the border crossing. We wanted to go down to Carrollton, and then we ended up flopping to Hartsville. So I'm hoping next year we get more interplay than we did this year, and maybe it's just different coordination of the planning committees to get that to happen.
Yeah.
If they could maybe drop one event and try to get larger events, that'd be great.
Yep.
Could
Larger
be.
events, maybe fewer plays to give teams room, like chance to breathe. That'd be maybe nice. I don't know.
That'd be nice, yeah.
Yeah.
And one last thing before the show goes, since this is South Carolina's first entry here, what do you think the cut line is going to be for district points to get to the top 50? Y'all have any idea?
Top 50. Brian,
based on your experience.
Yeah. Brian, you're like ace at this.
Yeah. So I expect it to be low 40s. There's a spreadsheet prediction on Chief Delphi of what their chance of making district champs are. They had theirs higher in the 50s, which I thought was kind of surprising. But what's interesting, we've seen a lot of clumping of points, right? Since you repeated, Anderson and Hartsville and Dalton and Carrollton, there's a lot of teams coming in clumped heavy. So I'm curious how that sort of affects the floor a little bit.
Right now, the 50th team has 49 points.
Yeah.
So, and that's without people doing extra plays yet.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking it might be up in the like 55, 56, 57 range.
Yeah. Because we're sitting at 59th right now with 41 points. So we know we need to get some points at Macon.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I think on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and end the show. So hopefully Kellen's back next week, and you guys have fun at Macon. And if I don't see everybody, have fun at District Champs. All right. I'll see you guys.
Good seeing you.
Everybody.
Funny.